cancer after a year of being ill. And all that time, I feared the worst, perhaps a bad habit of mine, and I couldn't tell anyone. So I wrote the poems in this book. This was my kind of journal of what was going on. And he never saw them. I wouldn't have wanted him to. But this first one, he saw. And it basically was written a year or so before the events in the book. And it sums up how I felt about him. I always used to show him my love poems, and he was kind enough to keep them. I think a lot of men are quite embarrassed by things like that, but he kept them. And this is called Bidey Inn. The arc of the book basically is the story of how he got ill and how he died and how I began to recover. And I hope that anybody here who's going through that or has gone through that will recognize some of the stages. But Bidey Inn was written a year or so before, and it means, it's a Scottish term for a live-in lover, and I just thought it was a fantastic word. Because you have been willing to stand outside on windy nights, bearing a basket of wet sheets, and waiting while I hang them out, my shape against the passing clouds, no clearer than yours is to me, yet truly as our own reflections, we know each other's silhouette. And even as you heft the basket, you tease me for not wearing shoes and risking bruises from the stones, and how I'd scold your shoelessness. We laugh about my bossiness, your lack of time for household tasks, why two such very different humans would hate to live or sleep apart. And for the sum of all these parts, and other joys too deep to name, you are my dear abiding love, and bide within my heart.
Wow.
And we had a holiday booked, and we went to Croatia, and I began sensing that something was wrong. He didn't tell me. It's classic Austin. He didn't talk about himself or what he needed, but I could tell he wasn't well, and he promised that when we got back, he would go and see the doctor. And for some reason, I wrote this poem at that point, and it's called Listen. For a time, life goes on, as you've always known it, are in the way of getting to know it. Each new thing slowly, new job, new route to work, new friend to buy your lunch with, and letting go of other things. Old job, a previous partner, views you used to hold. Only then something happens, something you didn't anticipate. No, really, didn't ever think would come along. It may appear quite small, a skid of pebbles rolling down a bank, an unfamiliar sound on your commute. Strangers you see stumble away from dust clouds, gold against the sun. But your body knows, tenses itself to run. And your mind agrees, but where to run when what has happened is unlike anything imagined? So you freeze, as still as shaking knees and clenching fists allow, and listen. And the next one, which is called Afternoon Rest, is just after he had his first diagnosis. And he was full of how he was going to get better, and this was just one of those things that we would deal with together. Not like the White Queen in Alice, I'd cry ahead of time. I couldn't tell him. Afternoon rest. My darling, lie back on your old chair and have a sleep. Head bending sideways like a bird at rest between one long migration and the next. Meanwhile, I let myself peer through the gate and far enough away to see and feel what may, although I hope not, lie in wait. Let myself for a handful of brave moments, though maybe they are also foolish ones, believe in that sad future, and believing, capture a photo of you safe asleep. A picture of this time before life changes, with body and mind still functioning as one, when you can think to raise a hand and it will rise, or to restrain a cry and it stays silent. I will not share this photo with you. Don't dare to risk a chance of saying I gazed into that maybe time before our days and circumstances forced me to. And like Lot's wife, fear I precipitated what otherwise might not have come to pass. Now, Ruth is kindly going to read from
Not listening. While you still listen, you find that people tell you things. Doctors, for instance, say we should sleep in separate beds, that you should eat more protein, and not look too far ahead. They're only passing on what helped millions of other patients, but you're unique and precious. Friends follow up their stairs of shock and sorrow with tales of someone else's cure. What do they know? Not what would really comfort me. If they could fix tomorrow or cauterize my feelings. But that's all right, you see. I just stopped listening.
And although he tried every treatment they could give him, and he did have a very brief period of remission, it eventually got to the point where the cancer had spread from his bladder into his chest and his brain. And he began not being able to write and then not being able to talk. And this is really hard when you know someone loves to communicate. And this is called Your Last Weeks. I won't forget the slow shutting down of options as cancer's blinds slide down around you, leaving me outside. Nor will I forget how words abandoned you, just a few at first. Swallows in the autumn flapping round your head, then more of them gathered on a wire. Your lips struggle silently. Your eyes ask me why speech is being denied, as a wind, colder than before, heralds your winter. And he did die. And life went into a kind of dark tunnel. Everything looked black and damp and miserable, and it was very difficult to do anything. Thank God for Palewell Press, because I had made promises to people and I had to keep them. And my friends and family, especially Caroline and Adam and Gay, your mum, and also writing poetry. That just kept going like a steamroller. I couldn't stop writing. And this is called What I Tell Myself at Night. So it's the title poem. And it's about those kind of half-truths or lies that you tell yourself when you're trying to deal with grief or depression or any kind of upheaval. You try and make a story that you can cope with. And bit by bit, that comes undone in your hands. What I tell myself at night. Everything that can happen has to happen in the day. When the school run runs, delivery men deliver, phones ring, bees hum, enough money is spent on things no one really wants to feed a small country. By day, I sometimes feel I'm making progress, although to what end I don't know. At night, when I peel back the purple bedroom curtains, it's always the same sight. The world is dark, ground wet, no light except from street lamps. The same rain falls each night, keeps shining on the tarmac, making cars' reflections shiver and traffic lights re-echo. As at night nothing new can happen. It can't have been at night when you found death, nor could it be so late, a week before that, when frightened beyond thought I rushed you back to hospital. None of what people say or memory relates came overnight. It can't have done, because at night nothing changes, the sky stays dark, lorries rumble anonymously from A to B, trees are bright wheels of twigs going nowhere, and the rain, the rain keeps on falling. This, of course, was happening against the backdrop of COVID, which meant that we couldn't go out and do the things that you really want to do when you're bereaved, nearly as much as we would have liked to. But even so, with gardening and writing and people contacting me, I did begin occasionally to have good moments, and I would grasp them, and I think you need to grasp them. You shouldn't, it's easy to say you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, but I would say to anybody, we're entitled to be happy from time to time, even though life is sad. Would you read the one called Looking Forward? Please. The next one, Looking Forward.
Looking forward. Looking forward to things. Storytelling, new friends, or planting bulbs is something I can't do at present. Getting through each day is hard enough, experts on bereavement say. And how are you from friends can drive me crazy. No matter what I answer, they all go straight ahead and tell me there's no right way of grieving. I mustn't blame myself for feeling, or even for not feeling overmuch, for thinking or not thinking of his touch. Little jokes I'd grown accustomed to that oiled my daily life, the gentle state of being his wife. I don't know how I am, or when I will feel able to respond to what might seem a simple question. At least I've started to imagine a time, however distant, when I'll be looking forward to my life again.
Thank you. Now, I have a very confused set of religious faiths inside me, as Guy would probably know, because I started doing meditation with him, and Jane, who is a devout Christian, would know if she were here. I have a little of everything, but I'm not quite sure what happens when people die. I don't think any of us are really. And so this is called Whereabouts Unknown. We had taken Austin's ashes with the children up to the park and scattered them, and that helped. And then I wrote this poem. You are with the dead, my love, maybe on the ground in Richmond Park, one with your ashes where we scattered them, in bracken, round the roots of trees, among the fallen leaves and beetle skeletons. You are with the dead on earth, or in the spiritual ether others speak of, that I have only ever half believed in. My messages to you are one way now. However much I say, you don't reply. Despite the hiss and crackle of self-doubt, it seems essential to keep telling you about our children and the planet. Though I do not hear your answer, I send my love and sense that someone, my special someone, has been listening. And it was interesting how scattering his ashes seemed to me to be a marker that I could now, I didn't have them at home in the box they give you in the corner of the bedroom. I had done something to accept. Hi, do you want to? found a chair. I'd done something to accept the fact that he had gone. We had had a humanist service, which was absolutely brilliant, but somehow I hadn't really accepted it until we put his ashes around the trees in Richmond Park, and that helped me a great deal. And I began thinking of all the things, some of the things in the poem that Ruth read, and other things that I would like to do, and feeling very, very drawn to the future, and yet not quite ready to get there yet. And I don't know if you know the term fill your boots. It's sometimes used disparagingly of people who help themselves to too much cake or whatever. It kind of summed up what I was trying to do at that point, which was I wanted to somehow create a life that would be worth living without him. Go on, fill your boots. Beyond the bathroom window lies our wild, wet garden, but also the wider world, full of nature and people, themselves a part of nature, and hopefully adventures. I mean to fill my boots with everything I can, friends and late night drinks, poetry events, walks in wild places, over generous helpings of cream cake, curry and rosé. To travel farther than was planned, climb higher than I used to dare, speak up when challenged, and champion the oppressed. Look out and down across new lands, or even down and out, who cares? Outside the bathroom window on its mortared sill, a rubber pump is lying, part of the water-saving system my husband built for me while his hands still could. Hesitantly, I stroke the pump's dark surface, which for an instant feels like someone's palm, firm and slightly warm, held out to steady me. How I wish, even while I know the winds of 7 months' winter and the hailstorm yesterday must have removed all trace, and how I wished for contact. Still, there's nothing for it. People and nature wait, I'll fill my boots. And I had ups and downs. But eventually, maybe 8 months after his death, my youngest daughter and I decided to go for a holiday. It got to a point where the police didn't actually stop you on the motorway and ask what you were doing. COVID was sufficiently behind us that we could book into a pub in the Lake District and go for walks. And we did that, and it was fantastic. And she cried, and I cried. And then it came to be his birthday, and we thought, well, the mountains are wonderful, but we think we'll go to the beach. Something completely different to mark his birthday, which is the end of June. So we picked out of the guidebook the most beautiful beach in Cumbria. You know, it had to be the best. And it's called St. Bees Beach, and it's at the beginning of the Coast to Coast walk. This is the last poem, by the way. And I had imagined something a bit like Cornwall, with dark rocks and white sand and blue sea. I got there, it wasn't anything like that. St. Bees Beach. St. Bees Beach in Cumbria, visited with my younger daughter on what was once her father's birthday. Sky threatening more rain, and grey water heaving dispiritedly against a shore of steep shelved pebbles. I couldn't see the beauty of it, even though the red cliffs in the distance were said to be beloved by seabirds, and the pebbles, turning out to be so many colours, made it hard to know which ones to carry home. Still, it was a disappointment. Our special day, remembering the man, felt thwarted before it had begun. Unwilling to go back without at least one new-made memory, we chose to walk the first part of the coast to coast, over the little wooden bridge and up the limestone cliffs. But as quite silently we trudged, tangled dune and streamside plants gave way to a glorious profusion of minute downland blossoms, buffeted and rustling in the wind, pink and purple ochre and brilliant blue framing a maritime horizon. She and I climbing higher still, an ebbing tide revealing golden sands, with children splashing through the shallows, and more children arriving on school buses, their tiny high-vis jerkins flowering, sudden as Welsh poppies far below. Then June sun coming out, and if only for a moment, finding myself again, feeling happy. So much for sharing that with me. That's the first time I've read that whole lot out in public. You know, I read 2 the other day
Yes.
at Camden, and
Yes,
that was
yes.
my kind of trial by fire, and I read 3 other poems, and it was good to have read some of them, but this was quite something, and I am thrilled to have done it.
Well done.